Ladies and gentlemen, as new guidelines were developed for road design, the need arose to create a new approach to the classification of the road network in Poland. Therefore, the proposal and the concept that I would like to present today, quite briefly, appeared as an additional task so that we can more rationally use the changes in the design regulations. Now, where is the essence of the problem? In 1999, the administrative reform took place in Poland, and a new category of roads was introduced following the change of the administrative setup. So the categorization was done automatically without verifying the actual functions of those roads in the transportation network. Secondly, oftentimes the road category is more related to who manages the road than to the function that the road plays. So there's a large percentage of the roads that have a completely different function that would follow from its category. For most local government roads, so roads managed by the local authority, the real road class is different than the nominal road class. I'm not going to develop that subject in greater detail. I know a lot of people know what it's all about, but let's be aware that there is a discrepancy between nominal class and the technical class of a given road oftentimes. The next issue is the problem of classification and how the classification can be used and can support the design and maintenance of the road in such a way that it fits the surrounding and the network. What our road network is really missing is the parameters for evaluation which are most interesting to the road user. We know that the road users are really interested in the time of travel. That's the most important element. Anyone who ever used the road knows that. If you use sat-nav, the first thing you look at is how quickly you're going to get to your destination. Next issue is the network hierarchy as a factor of road traffic safety. Generally, we can say that the classification and the hierarchy should significantly affect the improvement of road safety. In other words, we do not want to create general-purpose roads, but we should create dedicated roads, dedicated to people who travel long distance, short distance, fast travel, slow travel, urban roads. In the practice of many of the foreign countries, the issue is tackled in a variety of ways. The classification is, for the most, matching the process of road management. And by manage, I mean planning, building, and maintenance. Moreover, in many countries, there is a certain process for checking the category of the road. It is either done systematically, in regular intervals, every 3 to 5 years. So that is a form of systematic verification. We do know that the function of the road can change over time. Therefore, it has to be checked in regular periods. It is done in different way in different countries. I mentioned 3 locations: Germany, the USA, Great Britain, and New Zealand. In Germany, there is a criterion is the rank of combined settlement centers. In the USA, the criterion is the role in the entire network. And Great Britain and New Zealand, there is a mixed system that uses scoring, for instance, taking into account such factors as traffic intensity, the percentage of heavy goods traffic, etc. Today, the road network should be planned in an integrated way. Integrated not with the rest of the road network, but with the entire transportation system. We have a number of networks that overlap each other. We have the road network, but we also have public transport. We have bicycle lanes. In terms of collective transport, we have rail transport, which is railways and tramways in urban areas, and we have pedestrian pathways. The modern transportation policy usually looks very carefully at such issues as climate change and environmental impact. Therefore, we are aiming at sustainable transportations. So we are often seeing an emphasis on public transport, so that attempts are made that public transport should be competitive to driving in a private car. If we look at our neighboring countries, if we look at Germany and the criteria for classification of connections between the various networks, we have 5 criteria. There's a classification of settlement centers. Another criterion is the rank of the centers, from central to local. There is a way that is prescribed of how connections of different ranks should be made, of centers of different ranks should be made. There's also a certain prescribed time of journey between various settlement centers. And that is used to determine the parameters of a road, because that determines the class of the road. Also, there are quality levels for connections. And again, there are some prescribed criteria and parameters. The notion that is often used is equivalent speed time, the equivalent journey time. In our paper, we made a few assumptions. First of all, this concept or this classification should fit into the general concept of integrating the road network with other nodes of transport, especially public transport and bicycle ways. One of the challenges is that we need to implement the principles of designing roads as self-explanatory. We have to approach the issue in a practical way, and we need to design some requirements and parameters to support this. Next thing is that the issue of developing active mobility. By active mobility, we usually mean bicycles and pedestrians, cyclists and pedestrians. But also we're talking about other means of transport, including autonomous vehicles. And the design of the road network should be conducive to the development of these 3 ways of transport. The second assumption, if we use settlement centers criteria, then we need to create that settlement system in the first place. So we need to look at the settlement centers and classify them. Metropolitan areas, cities, smaller cities, small villages, estates, etc. The lowest level is plots of land or real estate items. The distinction divides 2 minutes left. Some functions include trade and service facilities. The next item is accessibility standards. As I said, the thing that the user usually looks at first is the time of connection. So how quickly can we travel from center 1 to center 2, from center A to center B? Very often this is travel time between the place of residence and the next large center, or between centers of different rank. The tables that we're showing here really show time that is in fact imported from the German practices. They can be adjusted for local circumstances. We can observe that for public transport, the travel times are slightly longer. That's because public transport or the vehicle, bus, tram, stops often. That makes the journey time longer. But for both types, that is, individual cars versus public transport, there are certain standards which we should treat as benchmarks when we design the parameters of a road. We have also a connection system. It's something that we know in Poland. We should not connect roads that have very dramatically different classes and categories. So if we have highest rank centers, we're talking here about metropolitan areas, then these are connected with other metropolitan areas with first grade roads, the most important roads. And this table shows the possible types of connection between road types or road classes. When we move on to the classification itself, the assumption is that we took the existing classification, so national roads, regional roads, county roads, municipal roads. This reflects the level of administrative management. And then on top of that, we superimpose subcategories. We have 3 subcategories for national roads, 3 for regional, 2 for county, and 2 for municipal roads. Please go to conclusion. In terms of classes and road types, there's a distinction into rural and urban. Urban roads, in other words, streets, with relevant markings. Z for rural, M for urban. We also have recommended lengths of routes. We often have situations where a local or access road is very long, which means that it should not be classified as either local or access, because it becomes a collector type road. And this categorization has already been used or done in Pomorskie region. Roads were divided into subcategories. We have here all the criteria to define plus traffic intensity. Above 5,000 to 2,000, and below 2,000. I'd like to move to another slide, to the next slide. Can you hear me? The criterion of subcategory is very important when we plan the development of the network, especially municipal level, because that constitutes the basis for recommendations. Summing up. Oh yeah, this is the slide where we have road function criterion. And the next slide, last one. I can say that the concept in some way is going to make the decision-making process easier in planning, maintenance, and in the efforts to shape self-explaining roads. It is also a certain transitional proposal because the classification should be done more systemically, and there should be a verification process that would keep the classification up to date, and so that the classification is consistent with the regulation, and so that the classification supports proper management of the road network. Thank you very much.